The escape from Isle of Shadows. The flight from Sydney to Honolulu started like any other. The small plane, a model often used for regional flights, hummed steadily through the skies. On board were an eclectic mix of passengers: Sarah, a wildlife photographer returning from an assignment; Mark and Linda, newlyweds on their honeymoon; Jacob, a seasoned journalist chasing a big story; Elena, a college student eager to visit her family; and Tom, a retired Navy officer with years of experience in survival tactics. They were strangers, each engrossed in their own lives, unaware that fate was about to intertwine their paths in the most harrowing way. Halfway through the flight, disaster struck. The plane shook violently as a deafening explosion erupted from one of the engines. Panic swept through the cabin. Oxygen masks dropped, and the passengers clung to their seats as the aircraft plummeted. The captain's voice, strained and urgent, crackled through the speakers. "Brace for impact." The world tilted as the plane plunged towards the ocean. The impact was jarring, a violent collision with the water that sent shudders through every bone in their bodies. The plane broke apart, and cold seawater rushed in, dragging the passengers out into the vast, merciless ocean. Amidst the chaos, some managed to cling to debris, their only lifeline in the middle of nowhere. Hours passed before the survivors spotted land, a dark, foreboding silhouette on the horizon. Exhausted and desperate, they paddled towards it, driven by sheer willpower. When they finally crawled onto the shore, they found themselves on a small, uncharted island surrounded by dense jungle and jagged cliffs. The island was eerily quiet, as if it had been waiting for them. Tom, drawing on his military experience, quickly assumed leadership. He organized the group, assessing their injuries and taking stock of their situation. They had little more than the clothes on their backs, a few waterlogged supplies, and the wreckage that had washed ashore. Their first priority was survival, finding fresh water, building shelter, and keeping a signal fire burning in hopes of attracting rescuers. Days turned into weeks, and the island's mysteries began to unfold. The group settled into a routine, each member contributing to their small community. Sarah used her knowledge of wildlife to find edible plants and catch fish. Mark and Linda, despite their initial shock, became adept at gathering firewood and maintaining the camp. Jacob kept a journal, documenting their experiences in case they were ever found. Elena, though young, proved resilient and helped wherever she could. Tom was the anchor, his calm demeanor a source of strength for everyone.
But the island was not as deserted as it appeared. Strange occurrences began to plague the group. It started with whispers in the night, soft, unintelligible voices that seemed to come from the jungle itself. Then there were the shadows, fleeting figures that disappeared as soon as they were seen. At first, the survivors chalked it up to stress and exhaustion, but the unease grew with each passing day. One evening, as the group sat around the fire, they heard something unmistakable, a distant, rhythmic drumming coming from deep within the jungle. It was a sound that did not belong in the natural world, and it sent chills down their spines. Tom decided to investigate, taking Sarah and Jacob with him while the others stayed behind to guard the camp. Armed with makeshift weapons, the trio ventured into the jungle, following the sound. The undergrowth was thick and unforgiving, and the deeper they went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The drumming grew louder, more insistent, leading them to a clearing where they found something that defied explanation. In the center of the clearing stood a massive stone altar, covered in strange carvings and symbols. Round it were remnants of a camp, tattered tents, rusted tools, and bones. Human bones. The realization hit them hard. They were not the first to be stranded on this island, and those who had come before had met a grisly fate. As they inspected the site, they found a journal, partially intact, wedged between the rocks. The journal, written by a previous castaway, detailed the island's dark history. According to the entries, the island was once home to an ancient civilization that worshipped a powerful entity known as the Shadow Spirit. The civilization had vanished, leaving behind ruins and a curse that demanded sacrifices. The survivors had tried to leave the island, but the Shadow Spirit would not let them escape. One by one, they had fallen victim to the island's curse, either driven mad or claimed by the spirit itself. Tom, Sarah, and Jacob returned to the camp with the journal, shaken by what they had discovered. As they relayed the information to the others, the sense of dread deepened. They were not just fighting against the elements, they were up against something far more sinister. That night, as they huddled around the fire, the drumming resumed, closer this time. The air grew thick with an unnatural chill, and the shadows around them seemed to move with a life of their own. The group knew they had to find a way off the island before it was too late. Tom devised a plan. The island was surrounded by treacherous waters, but there was a chance they could build a raft sturdy enough to navigate through the reefs and reach open sea. It was a long shot, but it was their only hope. The group threw themselves into the task, working tirelessly to gather materials and construct the raft. As they worked, the island fought back. The drumming grew more intense, reverberating through their bones. Shadows flitted through the trees, watching their every move. One night, while they slept, Elena disappeared. The group searched frantically, but she was gone, leaving behind only a trail of footprints leading into the jungle. They knew what had taken her. The island had claimed its first victim. With renewed urgency, they pushed to complete the raft. As they prepared to leave, the island unleashed its full fury. A storm rolled in, the skies darkening as the wind howled through the trees. The drumming reached a fever pitch, and the shadows coalesced into a towering figure, a being of darkness, with glowing red eyes, the shadow spirit incarnate. The survivors fought to launch the raft, battling the wind and rain as the shadow spirit closed in. Mark and Linda were swept away by the waves, their screams lost to the storm. Jacob was pulled into the jungle, his fate sealed by the island's curse. Only Tom and Sarah remained, their desperation fueling their final push to escape. They finally managed to push the raft into the water, climbing aboard just as the shadow spirit reached the shore. The raft was flimsy, barely holding together as the waves pounded against it, but it held. Tom and Sarah paddled with every ounce of strength they had, not daring to look back as the island receded into the distance. The storm raged on, and the sea was unforgiving. For hours, they fought against the elements, the raft creaking under the strain. But as dawn broke, the storm began to subside. The drumming faded, replaced by the sound of the waves lapping gently against the raft. They had made it. Exhausted and battered, Tom and Sarah drifted for days, surviving on rainwater and the few provisions they had managed to bring. Just as hope began to dwindle, they spotted a ship on the horizon. With the last of their strength, they signaled for help. The ship's crew, amazed to find survivors in such remote waters, pulled them aboard. As they recounted their ordeal, the crew listened in disbelief. When they asked about the others, Tom and Sarah could only shake their heads, the memories too painful to relive. Weeks later, back on the mainland, they tried to return to their normal lives, but the island haunted their dreams. The sounds of drumming and the shadowy figures lingered in the corners of their minds, a reminder that they had escaped, but not unscathed. The island, with its dark history and malevolent spirit, had left a mark on them that would never fade. Tom and Sarah never spoke of the island again. They went their separate ways, but they both knew that somewhere out in the Pacific, the Isle of Shadows still waited, its curse unbroken, its hunger unquenched, and they knew that one day, others would find themselves drawn to its shores, unaware of the horrors that awaited them.